Hey everyone, welcome to today's live stream. I have special guest Russ Waldell. Russ, before we start, I want to make sure that you're not being held against here against your will. That there's no one holding you at gunpoint to be on this panel today.
I came voluntarily. I'm not sure if I don't know if it was a good idea, but I did show up voluntarily.
All right. Well, let's hope you leave voluntarily as well. We got a show for you guys planned today. I'm Zach Scriven with 4.0 Solutions. We go live every week here at Tuesday News Central. To make sure to subscribe and ring the bell. You could also listen to our content on Apple, iTunes, podcasts, all the podcasting sites, Spotify. So, yeah. So, Russ, I want to get right into it. Were you held at the CESMII panel against your will?
No, I wasn't held at the CESMII. I haven't been held at a panel against my will this calendar year.
Was it at least a little bit uncomfortable? Because it was a little uncomfortable to watch. I did a reaction video. I'll link that below. I don't know if anyone saw that, but they seem to ask some really leading questions, particularly around the ones like, there seems to be some overlapping work here, or, I saw you commented on Matt Paris's OPC UA's vaporware post, which I want to bring that up in a second, but.
I mean, so the reality is uncomfortable, right? Like the panel wasn't more uncomfortable than reality. There are 3 overlapping protocols for specifically industry semantic or industry-specific semantic data models for machine tools. There's one in China called NC-Link. There's one in the United States called MTConnect. And there are one or several, depending how you split out the OPC companion specs, that are housed in Germany, but they're not really German specific. So having 3 different ways that we do the not the like ID or like metadata stuff, but the specifics of this is an axis, this is rotary versus linear motion, this is an interlock versus a door versus an enclosure, like all that stuff, where you get people and you argue with each other in a room until you come up with a universal definition, and then you submit that to ISO. There are 3 of those now, and they don't perfectly play nice together, and that is awkward.
So what's the solution right now for someone trying to create an interoperable system? What's their path forward?
So a lot of this is a fight that only exists in the future for somebody who's architecting a system. So the details in which you actually need to get into the meat of, call it like more than 25 or 50 data items, that's a limited number of use cases as compared to, I don't have any way to get data off the equipment. So you have like your straight up, I don't have a plug, or I don't have a way to pull any data of any kind. That's a somewhat separate problem than I pull data and it's completely different from brand A versus brand B versus brand X, Y, or Z. So solving the second problem is a much more complicated solution, which, like it's the unified namespace concept, right? So it's the same thing. It's just, if you have an industry standard that exists that defines some of these semantic definitions, you would use that to populate the unified namespace. But like, if we've got it well covered in autoclaves and industrial 3D printers and machine tools, that doesn't mean that we have the terminology for a paint booth or necessarily like a welder or something like that. So you might need to integrate more than one of these industry domain vocabularies into one or more unified namespaces. Well, I guess it's one unified namespace, but into one or more namespaces.
Okay. Now, I don't want to ask like what is MTConnect, because everyone can obviously just look that up on the website, but why would someone not use MTConnect? Like why, like I've used it when I was pulling data off of a CNC machine. It worked well, right? I used their Kepware driver at the time. This was like maybe 5 years ago. It worked well. It seemed to get me the information I needed, much more than I needed actually. And, I know it's kind of biased because you're you created you're the, what's your role at the MTConnect organization?
They call me the
CEO?
cat herder. No, so it's an industry it's volunteers, right? So it's system integrators and software developers and machine tool and equipment builders and the machine tool and equipment builders customers. And, we've got roughly 400 corporate and individual members that all kind of just get together and say, hey, we think that one of the obstacles to, industry 4.0 and beyond is lack of normalized vocabulary. So we are going to normalize the vocabulary. My role is basically like the overhead administrator, making sure that those people have an avenue to meet, making sure that all the legal stuff is covered, making sure that there's a membership organization, making sure that the basics of sort of outreach marketing and evangelism exist, and more or less facilitating the engineering conversations about, how are we actually going to deploy the tech.
So, what are OPC UA organizations' complaints about the MTConnect organization?
I see. I think that's kind of specific because OPC Foundation covers, and then the OPC tech that is supported by the OPC Foundation is super broad, and it covers more or less every type of industrial equipment around the world. And from both MTConnect Institute and OPC Foundation's perspective, the OPC technology, like UA, isn't designed to model a specific narrow niche of equipment. That's like what the data is. OPC is more concerned with the framework of how do we pass data from place to place, how do we make sure that we could pass data from place to place in multiple ways, what's security, reliability, uptime. It's there was an argument about, well, is MTConnect a protocol? Is OPC a protocol? Well, OPC has protocol sections enumerated in it, but OPC itself is not a protocol. UA, the unified architecture, is a good name for it. It's a framework of technology components and behaviors of technology components that you would want. And one of those components is, what's my domain model for whatever the asset that I'm describing is. And there might be like an overarching wrapper for assets. And then underneath that, you've got, machine tool asset. And so that's, to me, I don't think anyone at OPC Foundation has any particular conflict with anybody around MTConnect Institute at this point, because there's so much space between what those two functions are. Now, where there's frustration is in the universe of companion specifications. We've now got MTConnect for OPC and machine tool for OPC, and those two are like really close overlaps.
What about has anyone taken the MTConnect and created a companion or CDS companion data specification for like the Factory Plus framework? I know they were talking about like the Sheffield organization and
so the Factory Plus is a little bit more narrow than UA, but it's also
isn't that
fully
why it's more
developed and
appealing?
deployed in unit. Well, I mean, like, I don't know Factory Plus enough to know if I can just say, oh, hey, give me the components of Factory Plus, and then that's going to be what I pick up and install in my place. I'm like,
Right.
I've talked to Ricky Coles, who's leading that effort, a bunch of times. I've talked to Alex could be here, who I think is on the Discord, and he's one of the engineers working on it. And like, these guys are looking for how to get this project completed that shows a real world implementation of a set of tools. OPC is more like, or OPC UA is more like, what are all the tools that I could use and all the acceptable paths to go down? Think of it like
Doesn't
model
matter
versus
whether we
standard.
use them or not.
Well, I mean, that's it.
Because if you guys in the comments, if you guys said in the comments, or anyone's watching live or after the fact, if you guys have watched that reaction video, or you watched it live on the CESMII webinar, to me it felt like it was you and Arlen sort of against the world, right? Like they had like the different teams that were sort of like allegedly not. I mean, is there any commercial relationship between CESMII and OPC Foundation? Because it seems like they're obviously sort of leaning towards everyone joining the foundation, and the foundation has the right solution, but maybe that's just my opinion.
I don't think there's a commercial relationship other than mutual membership between CESMII and OPC Foundation or its representation in the United States, or membership of people that are on CESMII projects being also OPC Foundation members. I think honestly, it's talking to the guys that are kind of like executive management around CESMII. There's a lot of respect for this idea that you can get from broad concept Industry 4.0 to specific industrial policy platform Industry 4.0 down to a specific reference architecture model for Industry 4.0, so like the RAMI 4.0 thing. Yeah. Then you layer it even deeper, and now you're getting into actual instantiations of RAMI. I mean, it's a thing of beauty. right? If the world works that way and everything stacks nicely, that is a very neat, orderly, happy future that I don't think reflects the current state of industry.
um, JS Jeffrey Schrader has a really good reference model for the OPC stack in the Discord. You could just search from JS. It's pretty detailed. All right, so next question. Does that Michael Dowd?
Can I answer your last question about why somebody wouldn't use MTConnect? Because I have an
Yeah. Why?
amazing
Yeah.
answer to that.
Yeah.
So for most of my tenure, I started working on MTConnect in 2014, and for most of my tenure, the competitor to MTConnect was nothing. Meaning, like, people would just say, "I don't know why I'd want data off a machine tool in the first place." Thank the Lord that we are not in that situation, now, because
Mm.
essentially, like, this market developed for industrial asset data, and it just so happened that people who came before me had been working on that problem for half a decade already, and people who came before them had been working on it, different ways. So, like, there's the vision that I think is now relatively uniform about what's a smart factory look like, or what's a smart connected industrial system. Like, that vision is not particularly contentious or up for that much debate at this point. The details are,
Right.
but like the big competitor was, I'm not going to use MTConnect because I have no use for that data, or I have no use for a connected factory, or I barely use the data that I already have. Why would I want more? So those were kind of like the selling objections for a long time. And then where it is now is sort of like MTConnect is more than you would need. So that detailed information model, if you just want to get a status and you have 2 or 3 brands of equipment, like you've standardized on Fanuc and all the machines you've got have focus, you already have your API. It's Fanuc focus. You don't need another layer on top of that. If almost all your machines have focus and all you want to know is what's running and what's not running. Where you need that detailed semantic model, whether it comes from MTConnect or it comes from the OPC companion specs, or it comes from something that you invent in-house, where you need that tons of extra fidelity is when you have more complex applications, or when the data is starting to be consumed further and further away from the equipment, right? So, like, if you end
Mm.
up massive corporate customer,
Like machine
manufacturing
learning
in,
models, or
well, yeah, partly. So, like, it's the machine learning, but it's the people that are building that, and it's the people that just aren't near the factory. So, we're going to send production data, and it's going to go from operator to production manager to plant manager to enterprise wide multi-facility, and then it's going to go to a team of analysts that's 12 states away, and they have to somehow make sense of PLC registers like that. It doesn't make any sense because they can't
mm.
reverse engineer back to, this meant that the spindle was spinning and this meant the coolant was turned on. They need something that says coolant on, not register X123. So that's
Got
where
it.
the value of all the detailed information models come in.
Okay.
And that's like still the objection is, hey man, I'm just trying to figure out what's going on my shop floor. What do I need all this extra stuff for?
Got it. So Michael Dowdell asked, why does Fanuc use MKT Connect instead of Focus?
Fanuc supports MTConnect natively if you want it. It's built on top of Focus. So for years and years, Fanuc didn't have their own MTConnect components. They didn't have an MTConnect server or anything like that. You just buy Focus. You could get an MTConnect, basically an adapter and an agent package from a whole bunch of third parties. The requirement was always have Focus because that's the official Fanuc API. Eventually, this was probably 3 or 4 years ago now, there was enough customer interest from the third parties that Fanuc developed their own. And so now you can either have the MTConnect from Fanuc. I think they literally call it MTConnect server, or you can
He says,
just
"Oh,
still use a third
the
party.
question was why don't they use MT Connect instead of Focus? Is
Oh,
it to
instead
sell?"
of Focus? No, okay. So I mean, the answer is still similar. Focus already existed as the API, right? So that was already your pipe into a Fanuc controller. Was the
But it
Focus
only
API?
works in a Fanuc, right? Like MT Connect can work
Fo-
with other CMC machines.
that's right. Yeah, so you
Okay.
have your API to Fanuc, and they're going to say things like, "We don't want you to have access to I don't know, pick some really specific piece of data that's proprietary to the machine and critical to its run, to its ability to run. They're not going to give you like details that would let you reverse engineer the Fanuc controller. But if you want, statuses, alarms, whatever else, they spit that out via focus, and they don't care whether that then feeds to MTConnect that feeds to a wider system, or if that feeds to something proprietary to a wider system, or if that feeds to OPC to a wider system, or it feeds to a Sparkplug B mapping, and that goes to a wider system. Fanuc is like, we're giving it to you. It's focus. We have complete control over what focus looks like. And that way we're not responsible for explaining why MTConnect doesn't work when we already have focus as like, that's our way we do it. And once you leave focus land, you're in somebody else's land, and you're going to have to find support from them, not from us, with the exception of like, if you use the Fanuc MTConnect server.
Do you have an MT focus to MTConnect? Do you have that's something that converts focus to MTConnect?
Yeah, that's the native. Well, so
Okay.
that's going to be either the native or third-party adapters. Just look up Fanuc MTConnect. The first result is MTConnect server from Fanuc. Then there's a freeware project up on GitHub. Then you get to like dozens and dozens of third parties.
So would I use, let's say I have a 6-axis robot, like Fanuc makes those too, right?
Yep.
Right. Would I use MTConnect to get information off of that, or how would I get information off of a robot arm?
I mean, so the CNC land is healthier in terms of willingness to expose controller data than robots is. The closest direct analog to MTConnect that kind of gives you the detailed data definitions and everything is probably ROS Industrial. So between MTConnect,
like ROS or
Robot ROS, ROS. So it's another open source project protocol, most popular with sort of like AGVs and kind of mobile robotics, but they've got like an industrial fork that is the specifically for industrial robots that covers your 6 and 9 axis arms, some of your deltas and your scares and stuff like that.
And is the reason behind that more so because they didn't think anyone would need it, or is it because they wanted to keep it proprietary, or sell a module to get you access to that, or sell services to get access to that?
I mean, if I'm a machine builder, I don't want anybody except my customers to have access to anything on my machine. So that kind of colors the entire conversation. Is, as a machine builder, on one hand, I want to get the best possible customer outcome, but on the other hand, I don't want to be supporting a competitor's equipment ever. So the entire decision that a robot builder or a machine builder makes about what do they support and why comes down to, how do we ensure the best possible customer outcome without directly supporting a customer's equipment, right? Like if I buy a ZachBot and I buy a bunch of ZachBots, and you can say, I'm never going to support RustBot. Over my dead body will I give you any kind of access to a third-party system. And RustBot, he's over here.
So our bots can work together, or in what?
Of course, that in reality, of course, RustBot and ZachBot work together. Like this, there's an entire industry of system integrators and robotic authorized resellers. Like this is a world of making them work together, but they don't work together straight out of the factory. They work together when you pay an integrator to go and do the integration, or when you buy like a cell controller that does this job. The idea of sort of like a universal cell controller that abstracts away this one little piece of it, where at least can we have the same definition for on, stuff like that.
Right. Because a common application would be, I have a robot that loads parts into my CNC machine, right?
Yep.
Like that would be a simple integration. Well, it should be a simple integration, but
exactly. And if I make robots and CNC machines, and there's more than one company that does this, and I'm not picking on any particular company that does this, I have something special to offer the customer when I say, you're buying a Rust CNC and a Rust robot. They integrate tightly and cleanly together, and you're going to get the best damn CNC robot loading machine tending operation you could possibly get, because you went with Rust. It's the same pitch that Apple makes about why a proprietary connector on their all their hardware is totally fine, is because you're going to get this integrated experience. And it was the same thing with like the software side on the iTunes store, which, I mean, look how that worked out.
Right. All right. Yeah. Okay. So, would you mind, for someone who's not familiar with like how a CNC works and what that stack looks like, would you kind of walk us through like the different components and what you would, what you would kind of expect to get out of that? And because I've
Yeah.
seen like different, like Fanuc can make different. I could be a machine builder and use a Fanuc controller on my CNC, even though Fanuc didn't make the CNC. Is that correct?
That's
Like a
exactly right.
Morisiki, I know, made a machine
Yep.
that I integrated with, and it had a Fanuc controller.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, the basic piece of information here, and I'll explain it as if you have like sort of some industrial equipment knowledge. Um, the basics are, to some extent, every machine tool is still something of a one-off, right? Because you have, across a wide range of lines and a relatively small volume compared to something like cars, you have things that are sort of like mid run changes. You have customization for every customer, and that customization can be individual components, or it can be particular features, or it could even be like they'll paint it a different color. So with that as the context, right, is that to some extent every machine tool is still a one-off. You have, like, think about what's the lowest level sensing device that you might have. So you'll have a whole bunch of discrete sensors on a machine tool for things like temperature, position, speeds, that kind of stuff, maybe vibration. And there's no particular reason, functionally speaking, that you couldn't tap into individual sensors, pull the voltages off of those, and that's your signal. Now, those are probably abstracted up to a sensor controller, or they're abstracted to the actual CNC, the computer controller. It's sort of like does all the systems management, or they might be abstracted to a PLC for motion control tasks and management. So inside the machine, at a minimum, you've got raw sensor, you've got sensor controller or PLC, you've got the actual CNC, which has your HMI, your human machine interface, and all the buttons to actually control it. And all of these pieces, there's nothing stopping you from pulling data off of any of those components of the machine. But in theory, like, it's all software running these mechatronic systems. So you ought to be able to get it from the most abstracted layer, the CNC. And
Mhm.
that
Or
the
furthermore,
reason,
you shouldn't have to go to get it. It should just publish it out to,
yeah,
you know.
yep, yeah.
Are you seeing more CNC controllers doing that? Like, are they listening to what the community wants and sort of going more of like, hey, we're going to model our information on the edge and we're going to publish it into a unified namespace rather than forcing people to go, and pull it out?
No, I don't see customers asking in those terms. I see customers asking for connectivity and trying to solve connectivity with, you know, either single protocol or single vendor solutions. So it's things like, I know I want data off my shop floor, so we're looking at MTConnect to get data off the shop floor, and then the whole rest of that complexity that you just described, that's about information architecture and scalability. There are the elite customers are asking for that, and there are some that have kind of been pushing for this for years and years now. But I think the average customer is still not to that level of sophistication where they're like, they certainly wouldn't walk, like a typical customer isn't going to walk into their machine builder and be like, I need a good data model because I'm building a unified namespace, and here are the protocols that I'll accept for you to give me. And
Does that make
I
sense
don't know,
though?
man.
Like, to you, does that?
Yes, it makes absolutely perfect sense.
Okay. I
It is
just
a
want to make
very
sure we're on
good
the
and
same page.
logical question. Well, so that's what I was thinking
So
about before I got
manufacturers
on
are
here.
relying on us to lead the industry in the right direction.
I mean, it's a team sport, right? Like, you have to have pressure from the customer, because if you don't have pressure from the customer, there's no real reason to increase the features. But the builders need to also like showcase the best thing that they have. Same thing on, whether it's the equipment builder or the machine builder, or even like a machine distributor who's responsible for maintenance, like say they're responsible for the ongoing upkeep of the machine. Well, now they have a very specific incentive to be able to do like traceability of what the heck happened on this machine, because they're getting
Or
phone
even
calls saying,
reliability as a service model, or
yep, yeah, exactly.
continuous
So
monitoring.
anytime
Yeah.
somebody can innovate the business model, that gives them an incentive as sort of like a new customer of the data. And I don't know, in my opinion, like it's still kind of like the end user needs to be able to ask questions in a way that sort of like applies good pressure on what like the level of sophistication they're looking for out of the equipment, because the last thing that the guys selling the machines want to do is kind of like talk over their customer's head, because the like customers are suspicious of bold claims. Like if we say, oh, it's going to digital twin to increase your throughput and maximize efficiency, it's like, okay, but am I going to get a steak dinner if I buy your machine? Don't tell anybody I said that.
That
This
I
isn't
would
live,
not
right?
believe that that happens in the industry. Not for 1 second.
Yeah. I don't
So
know. Like it's pretty exciting at the tippy top. Like the people that get it, and like this is definitely true on the Discord, the Industry 4.0 Discord. Like that is a close sort of grouping of people for whom all the stuff that you just said, well, shouldn't it be like that? Like those people are all there already talking this way. So like if you're a builder and you want to up your game, just get on the Discord, go talk to the right people on LinkedIn, go visit the factories that are doing it right. And it's not, this stuff is not rocket science, and there's sort of like established best practices. They're emergent, but they're still best practices.
I want to yeah, I I I did not pay you to say that. So don't
Yeah,
expect to
but I
check in
also
the
I also
mail.
I also didn't pay to be on the Discord or on this show, so it's sort of
That's a
mutually
good point.
beneficial,
Yeah.
I would
But have you
say.
gotten value? Have you gotten value out of it?
Yeah, well, so like I was saying before we started, I came on really, really early to the Discord. I'd been on, like I wasn't a gamer, but I was on Discord because the kids on the high school robotics team that I mentored all used it, and that was like my only way of knowing that the meeting was canceled that day. So I was on Discord with them, and then shortly after that, you guys spun off the Discord, and I'm like, all right, I'll try this. It's very easy, and like it was one more thing to keep up with, and I didn't bother. But that was 2 years ago. Then some member of the Discord who was pretty active was like, "Hey man, you got to get on this, because like all the people are there talking about the right stuff." And I was like, "All right, fine, I'll get back on." And now it's yes, it's one more thing to check that I am happy to check and am enthusiastic to have good conversations about. So yeah, I got a lot of value out of it.
Awesome. Hold on 1 second. So to your point about how manufacturers can sort of lead their vendors to um, develop the solutions that they're looking for. We talk about our minimum technical requirements all the time. We have our basic ones, our basic core four: report by exception, edge driven, open architecture, and lightweight, right? So disqualifies some of the ones, some of the, right off the bat, that disqualifies like OPC. It's too heavyweight, things like that. But um, the other thing that we instruct, we typically do this when we're working with a client. We expound upon, those are what our starting point, but we sort of work with a client to help them define more detailed technical requirements, and also questions we ask potential vendors prior to purchasing any new smart thing in our infrastructure. Number one, and you guys can write this down. Number one, what data will this generate? Two, how is the data formatted and organized? Number three, how will the data generated be accessible by external consumers? And number four, does this smart thing support Enter IIoT protocol and use IIoT standard? So, that's a good starting point. Just like you said, you can, if you ask these questions, that's going to lead the vendor to be like, oh, well, we sort of don't or either we do access it and that you got to buy this module, or no, but we can implement, you know, we could real easily implement MQTT as an example into our software stack to support publishing. I haven't met a vendor, or actually, there might be a few exceptions, but most vendors are really happy to do that, especially because it's so easy to implement. And um, Mike Kernow said, What if I consume data in wingdings? I think he's strolling. All right. Michael Dowdell said, end users are generally not sophisticated. This causes a problem with influence on developers, right? There's sort of you could easily become corrupt. There's an incentive for some, machine builders to, sort of lock that in. And happened with Tell It. He said, why are you asking for XXX? Ford is not asking for it, or XXX or YYY. Large user is not asking for it. It doesn't matter, right? Ford,
That's an interesting one, right? Like and I'll use all of automotive. I'm not talking about Ford specifically here, but across all of automotive, and again, like I can only talk to the kind of narrow sliver that MTConnect is solving, but the cost of, I have multiple brands and don't have any interoperability for them. When you're talking about installing a new like assembly line or an engine line or a crankshaft line or something that's got both the expense and the part volume and the sophistication and the size of that contract, it's a trivial line item to say, I'm going to have to pay for a proprietary, protocol across these things. It's assumed that will be solved by whoever's supplying the line. And it's only when you get to like tier 2, tier 3, and you've got the never ending squeeze from the OEM saying, squeeze out all the waste, squeeze out all the waste, squeeze out all the waste. That's the place where it becomes apparent that, oh man, like we just keep paying $100,000 a shot for this integration. And it takes the same amount of effort every single solitary time we do it. And we're not getting any faster at it. And we're not doing it particularly profitably. And if we do it once towards a standard, then we never have to do it again. And that's just like lost in the details, because it's not a big enough pain point in automotive OEM land. It's not a big enough pain point to be like front of mind for solving it. Now, like every single other discrete manufacturing application, including medical, aerospace, and the whole nine, like everybody else sees that little bit of $100,000 of waste as a huge problem that they want resolved. So automotive is weird. Volume and size of projects make it a unique snowflake among all the unique snowflakes.
Okay, interesting. What do you think about injection molding? Like, going away from, more parts welded together, and like I think, it's like Tesla, who had their rear body had like a line, to put together the rear body had like 70 parts and like a 300 robot line down to like a one or a two piece single giga casting, right? Just
Yeah, like
using injection.
from the gigapress.
Yeah, the giga press. Are you seeing more customers like re-engineer their manufacturing process to like delete parts, delete processes to make the overall, um, from a holistic perspective of manufacturing, making it more efficient? Or are you still seeing like siloed approaches? This is my line, and I want to optimize and cut cost here, but I increase cost down the line or decrease quality. Are you seeing What are you seeing with like the customers you're working with?
From my perspective, manufacturing, and this goes like slightly beyond manufacturing into really like adjacent industrial spaces too. It's pretty segmented or stratified. So you have the people that get it and are doing it right and are following, old school best practices while also applying new technology. And that kind of top tier,
And
like they're
first principles
profitable.
approach.
Yeah, they're profitable. They don't have that much trouble attracting talent. Um, you know, they're kind of doing all the things you need to do as a company and being good at manufacturing at the same time. But it's a small section of the industry in terms of company counts, and then you compare that to this big fat middle of mostly slow moving, mostly kind of legacy enterprises, and then a very 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 long tail of sort of like legacy companies that are likely to go out of business within a generation or two. So I mean, yeah, I see everything you're talking about in terms of reduction of part count and application of maybe not necessarily new technologies, but approaches that were not feasible in the recent memory being tackled for kind of like it's not even a novel application. It's just it's a reimagining of what's possible based on kind of like many years of incremental improvements, plus better process visibility, plus like just basically a new crop of engineers. So I do think that the small number of companies that are kind of really excelling at that stuff will have a significant and outsized impact on kind of like what the next 10 or 20 years of manufacturing looks like, because everybody's going to want to follow, oh, Tesla did the gigapress, what, like how do we gigapress, right? And like even if it doesn't apply to other companies because they're not Tesla, that's still opening the question like, oh, how do we gigapress? So
Mhm.
I like the Halo use cases like that because I think they have a positive impact on the entire industry.
Okay. Um, yeah. What's burning for you right now? Like, what's a hot issue that you're working on or thinking about at late at night?
We have two super nerdy application spaces or use cases we're trying to get into. The first one is kinematic data, so like the actual motion of a machine. So think of your geometric model is what's the shape and size of the parts, how do they fit together. Kinematics is the same thing but for moving parts. So easy example is like a 6-axis robotic arm. Think of your CNC part loading use case. It's kind of like how do the joints articulate, how do they interact with the physical space around the machine, and then how do we use that information for things like look ahead, crash prevention, path planning and optimization, all these sort of like very esoteric motion control type of tasks that are now individually done each vendor every time, because the idea that you would have sort of any kind of publicly or even just customer available kinematic data that you would supply, that stuff's been kept close to chest. And we have now, by basically a combination of reverse engineering and buying some equipment that was more kind of like low end open sourcey sort of stuff, we now are like, well, hey, what if we took that kinematic data and instead of being brand specific, we could express that off of any machine that's running an MTConnect agent? What would that look like? And would anybody care? And
Yeah, what would they
turns
do
out a
with that
lot of,
information?
yeah. Um, yeah. So, I mean, you're literally asking what they would do with it. Like
Well,
you want me to
or
answer
why
what
you
they would
said,
do with it?
yeah, you said, oh, they're also asking for that feature, right? So what's behind that?
It's so it's basically it's getting you to more realistic and timely simulation of any like machining or manufacturing process, which means that you can do things in verification before crashing the machine. I'm really desperately trying to avoid the DT word. Like I don't want to say it. Don't make me say digital twin.
Downtime
No, digital
or
twin. I'm
oh
trying so hard not to say digital twin.
yeah, I don't really like that word too much.
I like
So they can
I
do
understand that
simulated
it's a
models,
thing.
basically. They can do models.
Yeah,
They can
right.
model it.
Yeah, exactly. And you can do real life, but you can do it in dramatically more detail without risking a metal crash, and you instead just crash your bits and everything's fine. This
Yeah,
is
like
dumb stuff.
the metaverse.
How did you find the one thing that I wanted to talk about less than digital twin? Good work.
Industry 5.0.
As long
Hey,
as it's
Woody, from the
connected directly
Netherlands.
to Meta.
Yeah, I want to see how we can get some NFTs or something in our space. Like we got to have a little bit more fun with this, you know?
I have
Like
an NFT idea.
all
It's
right, let's hear
really
it.
stupid. It's really, really stupid. So I at a trade show, I want to turn over a web interface to a CNC machine with a big block of aluminum and a nice, tough, high-speed steel tool in it. And using the web interface, basically put the machine in manual mode and give people a turn, 30 seconds or a minute at a time to go through and do whatever they want to do with the machine, right? Like they'll have a
On a
webcam.
virtual piece of aluminum.
So they'll no, this will be they will be looking at their computer. The computer is connected to the actual physical machine with actual physical block of aluminum, and when they press the keys on their keyboard to move the X or Y axis whatever direction, they're actually driving the path of the tool on this machine. Now, because it's going to be crowdsourced, right? Like the outcome of this is going to not be, it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be a nonsense part. But we will then, here's where it gets into NFT. We will then take the generated, like reverse engineered G code of that crowdsourced program, and that part program will be the NFT that we auction off, possibly with the video stream of what happened as well. That's my NFT idea that so far, surprisingly little traction for this concept.
Yeah, I could see that working, but just without using the physical. I mean, I guess having it tied to a physical piece of aluminum is pretty cool, or a physical, it's like the digital version of that. Yeah. So for those of you guys that don't know what NFTs are, they're non-fungible tokens, and we talked about blockchain and how that integrates with supply chain in last week's episode. But NFTs, think of it as well, there's fungibility, right? Non-fungible tokens. Fungible tokens means I have a Bitcoin, you have a Bitcoin. We can swap those Bitcoins, and we don't care. They're exchangeable. Non-fungible tokens are unique, and they really have a use case for like digital art or digital assets, right? And I listened to this metaverse conversation with Gary Vee and Mark Zuckerberg recently, and what they're saying is, the metaverse has the ability to leverage NFTs in a more, it's almost like they're trying to create a unified namespace, but for like consumers, right? So like imagine if I bought the example that Gary Vaynerchuk used is he had a Jets jacket on, right? And he's like, all right, imagine the utility of if I bought this virtual Jets jacket that I could only wear in this one application, or I could only wear it while at the Jets or the Knicks, right? The basketball. I could only wear this virtual Knicks jersey in NBA 2K17 or 2K21, or I can only wear it in this one version, right? That would have a limited use case. And that's kind of where NFTs are right now. Like it provides digital ownership, but imagine like, Fortnite, right? I buy skins in Fortnite, but I can only use them in Fortnite. Imagine a world where everything is connected into a unified metaverse, and sellers can sell digital assets that you can not only use in my application, but you can walk around with it. You can go into other applications and use that same unique, NFT item. I suppose we're probably getting way off topic here.
Yeah, like a reverse engineered G code.
All right, Michael Kurnow said for Russ, how are you tying the digital asset to the physical asset? Just curious, because it seems like to be a topic of many arguments I see online where the internet Luddites argue against NFTs.
Okay, so first of all, I actually basically don't understand NFTs. So let me go ahead and answer that question from the perspective of barely understanding what I'm talking about. Honestly, I was stalling to reread the question. Man, I don't know. How do you tie the digital to the physical in that case, right? Like, so the physical asset is this chopped up, ugly hunk of aluminum that we crowdsourced the part program. That's the physical asset. The digital asset is the part program that we basically like recorded everybody's keystrokes of what they punched in to give us this hideous misshapen part. So then what, you like embed some identity thing between the two of them, or you just give the physical, a part program number that's etched on the top of it, and then that's, that corresponds with the UUID of the part program, and then we're done, right? Like I feel like that kind of covers it. Now you have your ugly chunk of metal, your hideous crowdsourced G code, and you're the proud owner. Take it to the bank.
So I want to share the Chrome tag. So CryptoPunks is a pretty popular NFT project, and it's kind of proof that ugly things can still be worth a lot of money if you have almost a cult like following behind it. CryptoPunks are 10,000 uniquely generated characters. Each one of these has like unique features. Like, all right, so this guy's smoking right here if I bought this NFT, it would say like, oh, this feature is 1 out of 1,000, or it's probably not even that common. 1 out of 50, have this feature, right? Or gold earrings. 1 out of 10 people have that gold earring. So the uniqueness of these different features create sort of a scarcity and demand. Like these glasses are pretty cool, right? This guy over here on the right, maybe that's a 1 of 1. Oh no, it's not, because look, she has the same glasses. But in essence, all of these different characteristics that were generated automatically, like an artist did not go through and make all 10,000. They created the parameters and framework, and then they were automatically generated. But essentially, the arguments again, the Luddites would say like, all right, I let's say I own the NFT for Mona Lisa, right? And I go to see the actual physical Mona Lisa, right? And I just take a picture of it. All right, now I own the Mona Lisa, right? The difference, what Gary Vaynerchuk would say to the person is like, all right, here's what you just said. Go up to a big ass mansion, take a picture in front of it, a selfie, and then post it on Instagram and say, my house. That's essentially what that person says. Like, if I take a screenshot of an NFT, then I own it. No, you don't, right? Because when you own the NFT, you have the ability to go on the blockchain, click sell, and make actual money from it. So you,
Yeah, it's
you
the
literally,
registration.
oh, yes.
Without the
So,
registration, it's not the image itself. It's the image plus the uniqueness plus the registration.
yeah. So yeah, like how could we apply this to manufacturing? I think you're onto something, Wow, look at that.
I mean, it doesn't sound like something good, but I might be onto something.
The
Here,
lowest for
somebody
the
had it.
lowest price available. So to get
I
in
can't even
to be part of the
stand.
10,000 NFT owners of CryptoPunks, you're a minimum looking at 400K, or 88 Ethereum to get the lowest price one. The highest price ones look 7.5 mil, 7.7, 7.57 mil, right? So
So is there?
this is one of the
There's got to be a derivatives market for this, right? Where we're like splitting up there's now a complex financial asset that's basically dividing pieces of the NFT.
there probably is.
Richard
I
just came in and said, "Did I come at the wrong time? He wants the MTConnect blockchain." Like, no, man, you came at the exact right time.
tulips. That would
Yes,
actually be really
yes,
funny. A tulip NFT project. Once you see that, it's time to sell. Um, yeah, no, I do own a small amount of crypto, mostly Bitcoin. I think that my personal belief is that Bitcoin is sort of like the thing that holds everything together. It's sort of the foundation. If Bitcoin were to go to zero, then essentially that means any crypto that came after that has the probability of going to zero. So it's sort of like in Bitcoin we trust. Like Bitcoin's been the number one crypto, and it has still always been. It's sort of reduced its lead position, right? Other coins have grown faster, like Solana and Cardano and Dogecoin and Shiba Inu. So, but Bitcoin has always still been the number one coin. So it's sort of like the foundation that keeps everything from going to shit, in my opinion. But I could be wrong. So, but yeah, NFTs. Someone compared NFTs to, and I don't know if you remember in 2017, there was a lot of initial coin offerings or ICOs,
mm-hmm.
and someone in like from Q1 2017 to Q4 2017, it went up. ICO raise amounts like went up 100x. So some people are comparing like NFTs are kind of the new ICO type. Um, it's the new
New kid on
frothy.
the block.
Yeah.
It's the new
I mean,
tulip on the block.
but it sort of is cool that you get, I guess it's sort of the same thing. In ICOs, you got ownership to be able to vote and create new features for that coin. And now you get to be able to join a Discord chat and join a community. I don't know. It's actually pretty interesting though, because these are real awesome first world problems to have.
I think people in all the worlds want money. I think that's yeah. Somebody asked about digital twin. Speaking of virtual value, they're like, "What's wrong with digital
Mhm.
twin as a term?" And they're
Yeah,
trying to
let's
they're
talk
talking
about
about how they
that.
were going to stage an intervention to stop using digital twin. My only complaint, Zach, I don't know, man. This feels like it's going to strike close to your heart as well. pick an application as opposed to a vaguely defined technology. So if what you need is a simulation for maintenance, or if what you need is a like a work history or a record, I think being specific, and yeah, maybe it's arguing semantics, but being specific about what we're trying to accomplish in a specific application or in a specific project. You could say digital twin at the beginning, but then as fast as you can possibly go, get to what are we accomplishing here? Because talking digital twin leaves a lot of room for sort of, I would say, speculation and sort of generic concepts, as opposed to very specific concepts of this is the business problem that we need to solve. This is the
I
thing that will fix it.
I think that's the future, honestly.
Digital
Did
twins.
digital manufacturing lines creating digital
Yeah.
assets in a virtual metaverse. I mean, I don't see why. I mean, that's essentially an extension of what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah.
Start selling.
Yes. Well, so that we like way
Like
back we
imagine
were
if you
talking.
had an actual virtual manufacturing line and you hired operators and literally you had them put on goggles and you literally employed people and they were manufacturing some digital asset, some digital product. I mean, maybe it's like virtual Teslas that are unique and,
Oh, that's a whole layer I hadn't thought about. I was thinking they were going to be digitally manufacturing actual Teslas, but now you're really getting me into a dark place in my mind. You know what? The other piece you were asking what was keeping me up at night. The other one was capabilities. So this is to get to a self-describing machine, which means that like you ping your machine tool, or you ping your industrial asset, or you ping your GigaPress, and it says, "Hi, I'm GigaPress. I'm capable of so and so many tons of pressure. I have a work envelope of this and that. I have access to dies, 1 through n, et cetera, et cetera." And basically, like the machine is just able to spit out that information, and that's all kind of under this conceptual bundle of machine capabilities or asset capabilities. So the other thing keeping me up at night is how do we get to that self-describing machine, and
Hmm.
what do we actually have to build into, what does that mean when you work from I want self-describing machine, let me work backwards to specific data tags that haven't been normalized and standardized yet. And that is a thing that I've had on my mind for many years, and it just like keeps seeming so close that's like I get more excited and also anxious that like maybe I'm overexcited about a thing that's actually further off than it seems like, and like just out of grasp is more stressful than never going to get it. So yeah,
I,
capabilities.
I think that would be pretty useful for sure. That'd be useful because then the next thing would be like a machine asks another machine that information, right? And they start
That's right.
talking.
Yeah, and then pretty
Um,
soon Skynet is self-aware.
I want to talk about your comment.
Oh,
So
oh
this is
Lord.
Matthew Paris's article. It's a really good article. I'll drop a link below, so you guys can read it after. We gotta wrap it up here in a couple minutes here, but um, describe. Why don't you paraphrase your comment here for us on this? Because I feel like you know you wrote a whole paragraph here, or multiple paragraphs. What is it that you're trying to get across here?
Two key points. First of all, I'm a pessimist when it comes to universal plug and play for machine tools where everything plugs into everything else. I know machine tools best, but it's probably the same thing for other industrial assets. I see
Because there's too
modularity.
many there's too many one-offs, or
There's a lot of one-offs. There's not really a stomach to normalize across the board on one standard, much less one approach. So from my perspective, it's going to be these building blocks. So like I don't have any reason to argue, oh, don't do a unified namespace, you need MTConnect instead, because that doesn't make any sense. Just take the MTConnect model if it's already deployed on an asset and roll that into your unified namespace. Don't abandon the concept of unified namespace for the sake of MTConnect. And similarly, don't abandon MTConnect and say, well, MTConnect's not a unified namespace, so I'm never going to use MTConnect. These two things seamlessly work together,
right?
and they will also have to play nicely with, even higher levels of abstraction in the system, right? So like let's get out of out of product manufacturing, and now we're talking about sort of like sales and e-commerce and product management. Like, there's no reason that you can't take that chain of information that we had between how it got built on the floor up to how the entire manufacturing enterprise manages the thing. There's no reason that can't extend into how do we sell it or how do we maintain it in the future. And so to get to that level of, tight integration, I don't care how good or how big or how universal OPC or any other spec in the world is, it's never going to be big enough to capture that entire universe. So modularity and portability is critically important. To that end, like what that means functionally for MTConnect, this is kind of like the bottom piece of this post, is functionally that means that MTConnect is going to support OPC, and the way it does that is we've made it so that we're automatically generating the OPC companion spec, right? So we did it once, and every time we rev MTConnect, one of the things that will come with the revision to MTConnect will be we spit out a new OPC companion spec. We'll spit out, an XML schema. We'll spit out JSON schema. Like, all these artifacts are part of revving our spec and revving the information model that we care about. And if something or multiple somethings come out that are, catching on and gaining traction as, key connectors in this gigantic ecosystem I was just talking about, we'll support those too, because the entire approach is we want to support, the architectures that customers are building that are based on, where industrial data ecosystems are actually going. And there's no reason for us to be sort of like a zealot about MTConnect support, because we're not the only fish in the pond, let alone the giant sea that I'm talking about. So like, be modular and actually support what people are using is more important than, waving the flag and waving the banner.
Yeah, I like that you have that mindset. It's not whether or not, it's almost like how Elon Musk doesn't care if Tesla is the largest seller of EVs. He just wants EVs to be the new standard. And I sort of, that kind of came through on the panel, was like, you're like, hey, I'm not saying everyone needs to use MT Connect. I'm one part of the puzzle, but there's a much bigger picture here, and not everyone seems to share that same mindset. So, or even going as far as being able to admit one's own flaws, right? Like, here's why you wouldn't use MT, or here's what we're working on. Here's why you may not want to use us, or but and also your focus on one aspect of machine. You sort of go narrow and deep there rather than trying to be everything to everyone.
That's right.
Um, Impression of VDMA would be nice, but what was your impression of VDMA?
I mean, so I work for AMT, which is the U.S. Machine Tool Builders Association. Essentially, it's the Association for Manufacturing Technology. VDMA is like a umbrella organization that includes our sister association in Germany. So basically, Germany's Machine Tool Builder Association. My impression of what VDMA is doing is, and we kind of covered this early on, like, if you believe that like you can organize everything nice and tidy, right? So you go from your platform. So big concept of Industry 4.0, platform Industry 4.0 is your industrial policy, reference architectural model for Industry 4.0, OPC as a tool for the reference architecture, companion specifications as the information models that go into that reference architecture in OPC. Like, all that stuff stacks really, really tidily. And that's the universe inside which VDMA is operating, and the universe inside which they are, like, that they're making that universe happen to the best of their ability. They are all the way bought into that universe conceptually. I think that's why you saw Zach on the CESMII panel. That was the interest that CESMII has in what VDMA is up to. It's like, yeah, this is great. This would be awesome if we get this, bottom to top and top to bottom integration across kind of like not just the manufacturing enterprise, but the entire manufacturing industry. So my impression is there's nothing particularly wrong-headed about that. I see customers who are trying to deploy Industry 4.0 type of solutions, and it's not beneficial to them in any immediate or even all that particularly near future term to have a theoretical, conceptual, integrated model. That's not useful. What's the product coming out of it? What do I deploy today, tomorrow, next week? the part that's really useful about having this like vision for the future with an architecture and the protocol to support and everything else is those conversations drive the direction of the entire industry. So if the entire industry is talking about, monolithic, the whole universe must support OPC or MQTT or whatever it is, if that's the direction that the whole world and the whole industry is going, and that's what that conversation looks like on the high level, then, get on board with that, because that's what the future of manufacturing is going to look like. Right now, the whole world is not on board with that vision, by country or by customer. I have a hard time talking to like a specific machine shop owner or employee who's like, yes, I deeply care about a tightly coupled and integrated conceptual model for all of my digital data. They're like, I'm waiting on material and tools. How are you going to fix that
Awesome.
for me?
Well, Russ, thanks for coming on. We're out of time here. Guys, make sure to like and subscribe this video. Join our Industry 4.0 community Discord. We actually have people looking through their asking, ask your questions there. They will get answered either by someone from the community or by someone at 4.0 Solutions. We can escalate all that all the way up to Walker Reynolds. Walker will be back on the live Q&A next week, so that's exciting. And stay tuned for manufacturing widget NFT drop.
Thanks so much, Zach. Appreciate your time.
See you guys. Bye.
Take care, man.